you that are here have been coming here for a number of years, but certainly during this session, the attendance has actually been very, very healthy. We have had several sessions where we started out with a full class, and we've ended with just this small table. So you are to be congratulated with your diligence in attending the classes, and hopefully it's an indication that you're getting something out of it, and that it's being productive in your lives. Having said that, we've covered a lot of different subjects. If you'll remember back at the beginning, we talked about how to study Buddhism. We talked about, for 2 classes, I think, dependent origination. We had 2 classes, I think, of karma. And then we started going through the 4 Noble Truths. So we've covered a lot of material. And all of it comes to the next 2 classes. For this to be meaningful in your lives, I think the application of the Dharma, the application of the truth, and the task of realizing real happiness in your life, it comes down to a practice. So we talk about practice, 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 and that word is almost overused here in a lot of ways. We talk about practice, we talk about path. Can anybody just throw up their hand and tell me what the word practice or path in terms of Buddhism means for them?
It means taking what you learned here and actually applying it in your daily life. So don't just, what I like to refer as a Sunday morning Christian, where you come just on Sunday morning, do your Christian duty and then go home. It's actually taking what you've learned and applying it in your daily lives. And I think maybe, Martin, you've said this once before, where you come to class, you're all calm and peaceful, and as soon as you get out to the parking lot, you're in rage and fury and screaming and what have you at the parking lot. So don't leave what you've learned at the temple, take it out with you into the world and actually apply it. And that's what the practice means, right, is being diligent and actually applying what you learned at the temple and trying to be a better person.
Yeah, I think that goes a long way to describing it, is that it's actually taking what we understand of it and have investigated and have thought through and understand as truth and applying that to our lives. It's the actual application. And the funny thing is, you know, the progress is step by step. So we may be really good until we get out of the parking lot, but are we good till the first red light? Or are we good till we get home and the wife's got a honey-do list, right? So how far does that progress into our lives? That was good. Does anybody else have a definition of what? A microphone at the back of the room, please.
It's mindfulness, to remember to practice in the moment and to practice more and more sort of when you don't need to, so that when you get caught up in the fury, you can sort of jolt to remember to start practicing and get better at that, as opposed to you get in the fury's over, and then you go, oh, I should have practiced this, I should have practiced that. So to get better at the mindfulness.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because you know, maybe the first step is learning what Buddhism teaches, understanding what the truths are, and having confidence in them, and then actually get out and practicing them. And often the next step is actually practicing it with proper attitude, practicing it with a level of mindfulness and attention. So anybody else? This is wonderful. Jan?
For me now, it's to aspire that my practice becomes one with my breath, to be able to get to that level. There was this wonderful conference in China a few years ago where the Chinese government invited different leaders of Buddhist faith to address a large Buddhist conference. And of course, I wasn't there, but I was told the story that one of the, I don't know if he was a Tibetan master or whatever, but he was invited up to the stage to give his presentation. And his practice was so developed that instead of running quickly like he would, oh, yeah, it's my turn, he walked mindfully and slowly, step by step. And everybody went, oh. So to aspire to be able to do that, obviously not in this lifetime. Thank you.
Okay, so, great. I didn't rehearse this or anything, but, yeah, no, it's,
Was that a segue for you?
no, it's terrific, because the thing is, eventually, and the goal is, a practice stops being a practice. So when a practice becomes being one with the breath, it's as natural as breathing. You know, we talked about earlier on in the class about, you know, letting go and just going with the flow. Well, before you really have a disciplined practice, getting in, just letting go and going with the flow can get you into a lot of trouble. I mean, you're at a nightclub and you're married and there's a beautiful looking girl saying, will you buy me a drink? Just going with the flow can be a problem, right? But after the practice, going with the flow is going with a sense of commitment and dedication to a relationship. You can still go with the flow, but post-practice, it's natural as breathing. So that's a terrific way of looking at it. So at first, you start off with conceptual knowledge. We learn the words, we learn the Dharma boat, we learn the vehicle as information. But then we start to apply it, and then it becomes a practice. We're actually going to take this truth, take this knowledge that we're pretty sure it makes sense to us, and apply it. And after we apply it, we realize that it's not just to say I'm going to apply it, but how we apply it, with a certain sense of mindfulness. And then at the end, it becomes one with us. So I'm really sort of pleased the way that worked out. So. Before we get in, and again, the two handouts are, and I know I've bombarded you with a lot of stuff. Venerable Menyi and I often will joke back and forth that the facilitators get more out of it than, you know, what they're actually teaching. And I find this to be true. And once I sort of got on a roll, I find myself putting out 14 pages and saying, read it. So thank you for your indulgence in that. And what I've tried to do, especially with the lecture notes, is focus on Venerable Master Xing Yun's basis of his core teachings, but also I've put down at the back of the lecture notes sort of a bibliography of the resources that I used, also with an online document by Bhikkhu Bodhi, The Noble Eightfold Path, The Way to the End of Suffering, which Venerable Menyi actually shared with us one of the first years I was here. So before we get into some of the notes, I just wanted to start off this way. How many people, Zeus probably wasn't born when the movie was made, but how many people watched the movie Saving Private Ryan? Okay, so a lot of people watched it. I'll just give a brief introduction to it. At the beginning of the movie, it's present day, and we see a very old man at the end of his life, pretty well. And he's visiting Normandy, and he's visiting a graveyard. And he breaks down in tears. And his family comes to console him that have traveled to Europe for this ceremony of D-Day. And he turns to his family and he says, tell me I've been a good man. Tell me I've lived a good life. Because during the movie, a squadron of soldiers, a group of soldiers, were given the task of saving him because he was the only son of 4 sons who were still alive. They all were in the army. So through the movie, these men sacrificed, and eventually, I think almost all of them or all of them died, including Tom Hanks. So that's and they sacrificed their lives for him. And at the end, he wanted to make sure his life was worthy, that he had lived a life as a good man, worthy of the sacrifice that was made. And you're going, where's he going with this? So what I'm saying is, I think we've done the same thing. If you look at where we are in this country, with this opportunity, with this exposure to the Dharma, with all of the deficits that we are free from, we're not facing a repressive government. We are not facing a repressive religious regime. We're not a young woman in Afghanistan. We're not a young child soldier in Africa. think of all of the conditions that we've created in our lives and in previous lives and the karma that it took to get us to this point. We may not have had a group of soldiers sacrificed to give us this life, but think of the number of lives, the amount of karma that it took for you to have this opportunity. And this is why practice is so important. For you to have this opportunity, for you to learn the Dharma, and then not to apply it, is kind of a tragedy. That's the way, once you're into it, you sort of think of it that way. And we also talk about different levels of existence. We talk about the 6 realms and heavenly beings. And we talk about the benefit of practicing in a human realm versus a heavenly realm. So which one do you think is more beneficial? Practicing in a heavenly realm or practicing in the human realm? Sorry?
Practicing in the human realm.
So why would it be better to practice in the human realm?
Usually what brings us to practice is suffering. So a lot of us come here because we are suffering in some way. This is what actually brings us to practice. If you're in heaven, you're not suffering, right? So there's nothing causing us to come to seek out the Dharma in the heaven realm. It will be on the earth or the human realm that we actually seek it out for whatever reason that we're suffering.
Okay, so that's a great answer. That's certainly absolutely true. But compared to the vast majority of people who live in this world, are we in heaven here?
Yes.
We hear the monastics, and I've had several monastics say Toronto is the Pure Land. And we're going, we are? Well, the Leafs didn't win. You know, we're wondering, well, how can this be the Pure Land? How can this be? But think of all the deficits that you're free from. Okay? And in the past, there's a term in Christianity, noblesse oblige. Noblesse oblige. And what that means is the obligation of the nobles. That if you're a noble, if you're blessed with plenitude and opportunity, you have an obligation to give back to the people. And believe it or not, we are the nobles of the world. With the society that we live in, with the opportunities that we have, we are the nobles. So we don't want to squander the opportunity that we have. The other thing I was going to say, and Thich Nhat Hanh speaks to this in many of his books, we have to consider ourselves worthy of happiness. We have to think that we are able and it's right for us to be happy. So in other words, a good parable I often will look at is gardening. A lot of people like to garden. A lot of people like to have a nice lawn. A lot of people like to, you know, have a plot of flowers and so forth. And we work very hard with a small window of weather opportunity here in Canada to enjoy our gardens. How many of us take even 15 minutes a week to sit in the middle of our garden and just enjoy it? We're so busy cultivating and grooming and seeding and cutting and trimming and preparing and just to sit and enjoy. We don't take that opportunity, as Venerable Manyi says, to live in the present moment. Because we're concerned, I got to get gas for the lawnmower. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So, think of it this way in some terms. You should always be in the honeymoon phase of your life. You should always be in the honeymoon phase of your life. And actually I saw I was on the internet and I was on Reddit, and there was a young man who was saying that his father had passed away. And they showed a picture of the mother and the father. And it really got to me because there was this very 1950s picture, very handsome man, very beautiful woman.